And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's potluck time. This is part of the show where we go around the table and share some stories that really grabbed us when we were reading over breakfast, lunch, even 40 minutes before the show. Heather, what do you have?
I have a story that is not fun and happy, but it is definitely provocative and sad and interesting. There's a gentleman in Iowa who's on trial right now for raping his wife. He and his wife were widowed. They met and married when they were in their 70s, and by all accounts had a wonderful, happy, loving marriage. And then about 6 years into their marriage, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and put into a home over his objections by her children. And once in the home, the nursing home administrators came to the conclusion that because of her dementia, she could no longer consent to having sex with her husband, despite the fact that she never sort of objected to it or raised any issue with it. And apparently her husband did have sex with her, and now he is on trial for rape. And this is a terribly sad situation. It opens up a whole new world of potential rape charges. It is the first time that I could find that a person with dementia and their ability to consent has been questioned or brought to the courts. And, I spend a lot of my time defending doctors and defending nursing homes. It brings into mind all kinds of issues with defending nursing homes. Should they be in the position to say whether or not a person can consent to having relations with their husband or wife? Should the states be getting involved in these types of things when it comes to these issues? We have an aging population, and couples are going to be dealing with this as time goes on. And I think that it is something that everyone who has anybody who's older in their family or who is involved in the law should be keeping an eye on this case, because if this older man is found guilty of this felony and has to spend time in jail for having loving relations with his wife, it's going to be a scary thing.
Two questions. Your gut, will he be found innocent or guilty? And the second one is, if you were judge and jury, what would you find him as?
Both. I think that he will be found innocent, and I think he should be found innocent. I think that there's a lot of things at play here. There's a lot of familial issues with the children. There's a lot of issues with the nursing home and the way that the determination that she couldn't consent was made. I think that the nursing home was probably covering their butt because they're sued often for different issues, and so they want to make sure that they're covered. But I do think that we've got to find a way to make sure that this doesn't happen. There's got to be a better understanding within families and within nursing homes of what people with dementia are able to consent to, because to put a family through this and to put he was arrested within a month of the time that his wife died. It's a terrible story, and it really opens your eyes to the potential problems that you can see in these situations, and I don't even know where to begin to head off these issues.
Awful. Gentlemen, anything?
Great. I mean, it's a terrible story to have to discuss, but I'm glad Heather did. And I agree with every word she said. This is a can of worms that should never have been opened.
Hank?
Overwhelmingly awful for people. This man is 78 years old to go through this at this point in life. Absolutely no intent to commit a crime. I mean, clearly there's something wrong. When familial issues become criminal charges, there's something wrong with the system we're cherishing.
Well, let's hope Heather's gut is right on both counts. Yeah. Rick?
So, who I now call the Reverend Senator Ted Cruz, and I do that, and before people send in emails and whatever criticizing me for having some problem with Christianity, I don't. I have nothing but respect for Christianity, but I do prefer getting my spiritual advice from my spiritual advisor and not from my presidential candidates. The Reverend Senator this week in a speech suggested that if the Supreme Court were to rule later this summer that gay marriage should be available now in all 50 states, which is a distinct possibility, that the response should be that Congress should take away from the Supreme Court the authority to issue any rulings when it comes to this area. Now, as Heather's going to tell you, it's likely legal what he's suggesting. There is precedent on this. The founders did give the Congress the right to regulate, or was it the 14th Amendment that did that, actually? So he may be able to do that, in fact. Congress may be able to do it. But I find myself quoting somebody who you wouldn't think I'd ever be quoting, Senator Barry Goldwater, who is, let's face it, the gold standard when it comes to right-wing politicians. When Jesse Helms, if any of you remember him, wanted to do the same thing about school prayer, prayer. This is what Senator Barry Goldwater said. He said it would be akin to outlawing the Supreme Court. He had it right. What Ted Cruz is talking about doing is profoundly and fundamentally wrong. Let's not let that happen.
I don't disagree with you about taking it away from the Supreme Court. I don't. And I am for gay marriage, so let's put that out there. But there is an argument, and in fact, groups have filed friend of the court briefs on this, that the Supreme Court is not meant to have jurisdiction over marriage. That it is all courts in law and equity, and there's a separate court, an ecclesiastical court, that is separate for marriage.
In the Constitution?
Yeah, well, in the Constitution. And
I don't
Article
remember the
3,
word ecclesiastical.
Article 3 only talks about all courts in law and equity. And as a matter of history, there was a separate court
Really?
for marriage.
Okay.
And the cases that have covered marriage, like U.S. versus Windsor, which is the gay marriage case we saw recently, had to do with federal taxes and federal benefits. So that's a federal question. The case of Loving versus Virginia is another case that was criminal. So there's an argument there.
Interesting.
Interesting indeed. When we take a quick break, we come back with more potluck. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm your host, Joe Concha. They were actually applauding in here before. That was that hand you saw come across your screen. If you're just joining us.
Go, Joe!
Yes. We're in the middle of our smoky potluck where we're sharing our favorite stories of the day. Hank, you have a culinary masterpiece for us.
Yeah, right. No, listen, I'm always looking for heroes in the news or people who've done extraordinary things, and particularly when they pass. So in this case, a labor leader from Chicago to New York, someone who had major impact on this country, a fellow named Victor Gottbaum. Why is he interesting? Yes, he was a labor leader, and yeah, he fought very hard for the people he represented, and yeah, he set the standard for representing public sector workers. But when New York City went into fiscal meltdown in 1975, Victor Gottbaum had the courage to commit union pension funds. That was his decision to buy bonds to bail out the city, which became the model for workouts for municipalities around the country. Okay, I think an extraordinary act of bravery, tremendously going beyond oneself. I'm always amazed by the things people do that they don't have to do. Here's a clear case, and that when they get rewarded for it is one thing, but most people who do the things they don't have to do don't get rewarded, and nor did he. So he died this past Sunday, I think, and he set the standard for doing what was right for the people he represented and doing what was right for society at large.
I'm so glad that you brought him up as your potluck because I did not know who he was, to be honest, and I researched it, and this is why I love doing this because I learned so much.
Yep.
But one of the things that I noted is, you guys have often talked about how unions used to be and how they should be,
Sure.
and he's the epitome of that, really.
I knew Victor, and he was Victor Gottbaum was an extraordinary person, very well read, very smart. I always admire people again who do what they're supposed to do, and they go beyond that point. Victor Gottbaum didn't have to be a tough guy, could have collected the check, went out and represented his people. But when push came to shove and people got into trouble in the city, so again, this was the standard for workouts. Municipalities have followed this since 1975. He stood up, took the money of his own workers, and took the gamble. And the result was the most successful municipal bailout, the only one of its kind in history.
Rick?
I'm really glad you brought him up. I mean, I have often used Victor Gottbaum as an example of what a union leader should be. He's a hero. I was a very big fan, and we'll raise a cup to his memory.
He was quite something, and as a model for leaders, regardless of whether they are Republican or Democrat.
That's right.
That standard of doing what is right because it is the right thing to do ought to be the one we follow.
Principle's not convenient with Victor, it appears.
Correct.
And thanks for bringing that up as well. I learned a lot
you.
in reading about that. Had not heard of him, to be honest with you, but maybe it's a generational thing. Speaking of death, unfortunately, I'm going to talk about something different, the death of golf. You're saying this is Newsmax. We don't talk about sports on here. Well, I think this is more of a cultural kind of thing. I want to share some numbers with you first. Last year's Masters, when the Masters starts in 2 days, lowest ratings since 1957. The U.S. Open, its ratings last year were down 46% from the year before, but this is what's most interesting. Golf courses, more closed than open last year. How many more? Well, 14 opened and 157 closed. Now, why is all this happening? And you're seeing the cover of Golf Digest, by the way. Where did that come from?
It's happening.
Right. Well, look, I think when Golf Digest starts resorting to topless women on covers, I understand she's doing
Looks
that.
better than mattress pants, I'll tell you that.
Well,
I mean,
That's a very good point. I mean, you could put somebody like Rory McIlroy on that cover, and maybe it won't sell as many as Lexi being on the cover. But I think that Golf Digest cover really shows how desperate golf is right now. Pay attention to us, because young people are not picking up golf clubs and taking up this sport. It is a dying sport. It's for the old and it's for the rich. Right. Well,
You know, I'm playing this weekend with my boyfriend's 7-year-old son, and we're
Right.
going to get him started on it.
Good.
I think it's slow. It's a slow sport, and that's the problem. I know that they've tried to speed it up with like things you can ride while you play and all types of different things. But I do think that there is a group of people who will always enjoy it, young and old.
And I am willing to go double or nothing on my basketball losses of yesterday, that the Masters ratings will be up significantly
Not
this
of
week
Tiger's.
as we wait to see if Tiger got a short game back and if Rory McIlroy can complete the Grand Slam.
In a political season, there are people going to be hope that people do get lost in the rough, that they disappear in sand traps. There's all kinds of things that can happen here. I mean, you gotta keep this going.
Hank makes a good point. You do bring up Tiger, and yes, there has been a Tiger effect to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
But this is just as much about, and this is why I brought it up. You know, on a show like the Daily Wrap, we don't talk sports that often. That this is about real estate as well. And there are a lot. Right now, I live in Hudson County my entire life. Let me tell you about Hudson County, everybody. Anytime I wanted to go play golf, I had to drive an hour just to get to a golf course because it was too urban. Well, I know now there's two in
Should have grown
Bayonne.
up in my hometown.
Or Jersey
Everywhere was
City.
a golf course.
Yeah.
Right. Here,
Great course in Jersey City.
yeah, I know. They built it on a landfill, believe it or not. I wrote about that for the New York Times way back when. And now I finally move out to another place in New Jersey that's suburbs. And I have 1 block away from me a golf course. And the minute I get there, now they're closing. Why? Because the real estate, there's so
Yeah.
much of it
Oh,
that,
that's
that
it.
they're saying, you know what, for the dues we get, we're barely breaking even, or we could sell this for, they sold it for tens of millions of dollars. And that's why that number is amazing. 157 courses closed, only 14 open.
It's a cycle.
I think that's worse than cycle. I don't know about that. Anyway, when we come back, it's time for Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap, and it's only on Newsmax TV.